baking. I'm excited today. These guys have been chasing this man for God knows how long.
Forgive me. Oh. It's been a long
No,
it's been a
no,
long time.
it's a proof of my ministry. I'm
Yes,
a
yes,
salesman.
yes, yes, yes.
Inyolua Aboyeji, how you doing? Welcome to the
Very well,
podcast. Yeah,
very well. Well, thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
great. So the first question I want to ask you is, how did Flutterwave, how did Flutterwave acquire its first 1,000 customers, and what was the playbook like?
That's a great question. So, I mean, what we did to acquire our first 1,000 customers. So, we Flutterwave's DNA is that it's an enterprise payments firm. So we didn't have the stomach for like Paystack. We don't do beautiful pages and running around SMEs, right?
Hmm.
It's a great business, but just not our thing, right? So what we leveraged was partnerships. So I remember the first partnership we did Access Bank. Access Bank had a lot of merchants that it was banking.
Very good.
They'll come to it and say, hey, we need payments. Can you help us? At the time, the only option they had was sending them to InterSwitch. InterSwitch will now ask for 500,000 naira,
Mm,
spend 3 to 6 months on Skype trying to figure out how to integrate. So when we came with a superior product offering, all we had to do, and with some relationships like Access Bank, we said, look, rather than send them to Pay with Capture, we'll send them to Access Bank,
mm,
right? And if we also happen upon other bank customers who want to accept payments through us, we would also send them to Access Bank. So that was the first one. So we were partnered up with Pay with Capture, which was acquired by Access Bank at the time, and we worked with them to acquire customers. In fact, we took Uber through this route as well.
wow.
So that was how we got our first couple thousand customers. We did the same thing with GTB. We did SME Market Hub.
Mm.
We did quite a number of other big firms.
Oh,
So
that's a great acquisition strategy. What didn't work?
I would say trying to um, trying to serve. You have to really automate the service, right?
Hmm.
And make it seamless and think about it end to end. Because I mean, ultimately, our time was still valuable, right?
Yeah.
So let me boil the lessons down to numbers. At the end of the day, after all the serene, only I think by the time I left, there were 50 customers that were responsible for about 70% of the traffic and I think about 50 or 60% of our profits.
This is powerful. Power law.
So just maybe we wouldn't have been so overworked if we had just focused on
Yeah.
the ones that actually made sense.
Mm,
But I think the way we would excuse everything today was that the others were sales and marketing. So that's it.
mm,
Yeah. I don't know if
fantastic.
that's the strategy they're using today, but that was what worked in our time.
But that's a great way of looking at what is working and double down on it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Great, great, great. All right, reflecting on your time on Flutterwave and Dell. I mean, guys, this guy has run two unicorns. So you better listen to him. Everything he says, including his speech, everything he says. So working with those two big companies and working in the trenches, what are some of your one to two biggest takeaways that entrepreneurs and founders can learn? Leadership takeaways, marketing takeaways.
I think the biggest thing is that talent is the most important thing in building any of these businesses. Like, if you don't have the right people, you can just you can waste your time. Uh,
Mm,
you have to define the right people, not just as people who are competent enough to do the work, but people who have the same motivation and values as you.
exactly.
Because that's even more important at the end of the day. Because
Mm,
okay, like most people can do basic work, but if at some point they get satisfied and they don't grow, or if at some point there's huge ethical divergence between the way you see the world and the way they see the world, I think you'll still run into big trouble up
mm,
front. So it's just something to keep in mind.
great.
I think on the other side, what was the biggest marketing lesson I've learned? I think the biggest marketing lesson I've learned is like you really need to understand and predict your customers' behavior to be able to sell to them. So if you don't know your customer well enough, it's like, I know I sort of have a sense of what my 5-year-old can and cannot do. Do you understand? Like I
Hmm.
know her well enough to know that if I do this, she'll do that, right? You know your dog well enough to know if your dog does this, this is what it means.
Hmm.
So it's so important to understand your customer at that level of detail,
I like
not
that.
academically, but really from a point of view of you understand their mental model and how they think about things before you can sell to them and before you understand what marketing messages will make sense to them.
Mm. This connects beautifully to. I heard you say. I, I heard a term from you first. Entrepreneurship as a service. You said once they give a founder a money and the guy has got global talent visa, he has just know that just forget that guy because there's something you said very powerful that your customers, their habits have changed, they
Yeah,
have moved.
yeah,
So if they are not connected to that power base, this is not
yeah. I
working.
mean,
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was
entrepreneurship
part.
as a service, you pay an entrepreneur money so you can
Yeah.
you can
I
get
like that.
reports, but there's nothing that's really going on with the customer. There's no business being built.
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen that a lot in my career,
yeah.
and yeah, I mean, it's something people do unconsciously.
I like
So
that. I like that. I like that. I mean, you have close to like 150 companies
yeah, more
in
maybe yeah, I'm closer to like maybe just in our own portfolio, maybe
your portfolio.
120,
Yeah.
and then from Accelerate another 60. So yeah.
Great, great. So what have you changed what did you believe about growth in Africa that you no longer believe?
Mm. I used to think that growth in Africa was a function of what people consumed, and now I am more a believer in the fact that growth is now a function of what people get paid for producing.
Hmm.
So when you think about where the majority of our wealth comes from, you know, the last 60 plus years of our country's history, it's oil.
Yeah.
Um, and the number of people that work in the oil industry, I think you will struggle to get to 30,000 people, right?
Hmm.
The largest employer of labor in Nigeria is Dangote, single employer of labor, and he recruits 35,000 people, right?
Whoa.
Now, that's the smallest BPO in India.
What's a BPO?
Business process outsourcing. So that's like the smallest. It's a small firm in a country like India. When you're big, when you're talking about 100,000 people, WPP, which is just an advertising firm in
Yes.
London, they have
Yes.
100,000 people all over the world.
Sam
Yeah,
Martin. Martin
something.
Sorrell, yeah.
Yeah, they have 100,000 people all over the world. That's just WPP, right? So I'm now of the opinion that no, it's not about how big 200 million people, how many are working.
Mm. Hi, this is so powerful.
Because if they are not working, they are not any salary. And if they are not any salary, they don't have money to buy anything from you.
Come on now. There's something you said. You said that Nigeria and Bangladesh has the lowest labor pay, something like that.
Yeah,
That
labor
one of the
cost.
things that can help us grow is when we begin to export
Yeah,
labor. I thought that
services.
was. Can you expand that a bit?
Yeah, so I think the biggest play for Nigeria, we have to be very so one of the things I find funny about the way we think about our country is that because of a lot of so much of our country is abstracted from so much of our country is abstracted from the reality of how value gets to government and streams down to us. And for a very long time in the 70s and 80s, maybe even up until maybe 2014, right? The way that happened was NMPC, which was a joint venture with other companies, that most Nigerians don't work in, right?
Yeah.
Would actually go explore oil, sell. None of us will see that except people who live in the Niger Delta, who are a very small proportion of the country. And then the money gets deposited in NMPC and paid into the government, right?
Yeah.
Then the government has a budget and everybody goes to Abuja and collects that money. For a good 40 years, that was our reality of how we saw money and value. Do you understand?
Yeah.
But the world has changed now, right? NMPC is not as big as it used to be in terms of its contribution to the country's economy. You understand what I'm saying? And now, the only advantage we have is no longer oil, but our population. So when people start talking about things like, oh, Nigeria should industrialize, I said, for who? Because, yes, you have 200 million people, but the vast majority of them can't actually afford to buy anything. Because either they are young, half of that 200 million people, half of them are under the age of
40.
No. Half of them are under the age of 19. So they can't buy anything. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, fully.
The other half, so you're left with 100 million people, right? The other half, you want to industrialize for them, but the largest employer of labor in your country only pays 35,000 people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who would buy those things you are making? Who? Now, you say, okay, you want to sell them to the rest of the world. Well, the rest of the world is going to go for the cheapest products, right? And those products are being made in China. Now, of that 100 million people, right, what nobody says out loud is that the vast majority of them are farmers.
Really?
Yeah. That's the largest employer of labor in this country. Farming. So we have to always think about things, logically and accurately. So what I've been trying to say is that Nigeria only has a competitive advantage in people, in talent, right? We produce 600,000 graduates every year. Let's even say some of them are no good, right? Minimum, we still have 300,000 educated people coming out of our universities every year.
Yeah.
What can we do with those 300,000?
Export their talent.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
300,000, let's even say, okay, out of those 300,000, only 100,000, you understand, want to work. The rest, maybe they have better jobs or they're not interested or whatever. Now, those 100,000, if you put them in a computer lab, find them work that pays, let's even just say $5 an hour, right? Every $5 an hour, let's say they're working 10 hours a day for the sake of argument. That's $50 a day. $50 a day today in Nigeria, as of yesterday's exchange rates, right? It's 200,000.
That's a lot of money. This guy's smart.
You understand where I'm coming from?
So much.
So that's your only competitive advantage. And it's good to just accept it. I know people want to be more ambitious. I want Dangote. I want this. I want that. Fine. I get it. But finish your breakfast. First make 200,000 naira a day before we take you seriously. Do you understand what I'm saying?
This is powerful, man.
That's all I've been saying. Like, just make 200,000 naira a day. If you make 200,000 naira a day, that's a very good, It's not a bad outcome.
At all. At
It's
all.
not a bad outcome.
At all. At all.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, 50, my bad, 50 times 1.5 would be roughly 75,000. But even that is still money.
That's still money. Seriously.
That's still money.
That's still money. That's still money. Wow. 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 Let me ask you some more questions.
No problem.
All right. Okay. So I'm curious to ask about how you know, because of your experience in entrepreneurship in terms of
Yeah.
strategy,
Yeah.
how are the what are the best pre-mortems or post-mortems after a campaign?
Mm.
You know, because a lot of times when things don't work out, we don't really look at it, or why didn't it work? Why didn't this strategy work in Nigeria? Because sometimes we just take a strategy from America and we dump
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No,
Yes.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I think for me, like I always say, the focus is always on what do we know about the consumer that drives their behavior.
Mm.
And if we don't know anything about a consumer that drives their behavior, we don't do anything.
But in a country without research, how do we know about the consumer's behavior?
Well, you know, I mean, research is in, there are different kinds of research, right? You can do research on 1 million people. You can do research on 100 people. And you can, no matter how small your sample size, you can extrapolate some common patterns.
Yes.
You know, there's research doesn't have to be done in a university with clinical you know. Research is something anybody can do. Go out and ask questions. Sit down and observe people. Anybody can do
Yes.
research.
Yes.
It's not a licensed activity.
Yes. I like that. I like that. I like that. This
You know,
is deep.
so
It's not a licensed activity.
it's not now.
But how
Anybody
many
can do
small
research.
businesses do it?
Exactly. So
Wow.
you can just walk out and just go and talk to your customer. They will not, I swear to God, they will not kill you. They will not. In fact, they will think, yeah, you're even asking me question. I really like you.
This thing I saying is very, very powerful. This thing
You
about
know,
research
so,
is
you know,
extremely powerful.
it's just to do the work to think. That's all. Just do the work to think. So I always say, look, it is important to understand your customer. Understand your customer. Don't have assumptions about your customer. Just understand them. McKinsey doesn't need to understand them for you. You understand your customer.
Ian, do you know I wrote a book for young people? And I knew that the young people in Nigeria couldn't afford the book. You know what I did? I went to the NMPC hospital. They bought that book in droves to give to young people during the holiday period.
Now you understand your customer.
I went to an ex-governor's wife. She
Yeah.
bought the book. I sold over 10,000 copies of that book.
You understand your customer.
I understand what you're saying.
Just understand your customer. The guy cannot afford it. Okay, fine. But he wants this thing. Okay, fine. What can he afford? And how can I make sure he gets what he can afford?
Mm,
You understand? Simple. It's not rocket science. Honest to God.
it's very
So,
powerful.
It's I find that, you know, a lot of the times people bring in ideas, forgetting that those ideas themselves were researched. They didn't get to those ideas by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit,
Mm,
even though that one has its place.
mm.
But I'm just saying that they did not pick it from the streets. They too did research and said this is what works in our environment. And there's nothing that says you cannot tinker with it if it doesn't work in your environment.
This is so deep. Yeah, I have a question for you. I know that the numbers are shifted, but this was a statement you made like 2-3 months ago. You said that out of 140 investments I have, the top 5 can yield significant returns. I don't need all of them to be successful. One successful investment can cover for the rest. That's the power law. That's a 4% conversion success rate.
Yeah.
I thought that was powerful. Do you also advise your portfolio companies to make small bets like that? Make small bets, and you never can tell which one can just turn things around for your business.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make, and I even call them experiments, right? You don't know, and that's the power of research, right?
Yes.
You understand? You know, so you don't know what when you understand your customer, there are many ways that your customer's problems can be solved, right? Some ways are more effective than others. So you need to measure.
Mm,
You understand? You need to have
mm,
a measure. You get to know, okay, this channel brought in this, this channel brought in this, this channel brought in this. But what I notice about Nigerians is that when they try three channels, one channel is working, they will continue to run the others instead of canceling the remainder and focus. I had an entrepreneur there, they came to meet me and said, I'm finding you so difficult to advertise. She sells skincare products. Da, da, da. I said, okay, what have you tried? Said, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. Instagram is working, but I'm finding it difficult to get Facebook to work. I said, okay, Instagram is working by a magnitude of 10 times. Forget Facebook now. Focus on your Instagram. That's what you do, right? You double down on what works and you ignore what doesn't work,
so powerful.
right? Now, if things shift, you will see it in the trend line. Or if you understand your customer, that's the other thing. Don't accept experiments as magic. Understand what the reasoning behind them is.
Mm,
Why are people buying from you on Instagram? Okay, it's mostly women. They can see the product. They can understand other people's interest in the product, which drives purchase.
mhm.
Understand what I'm saying?
So powerful.
And they're in buy mode when they're on Instagram. That's their shopping mall.
Mm,
So you understand the factors. If that changes and now they're on TikTok, you understand. You do
yeah,
an experiment before everybody else gets there, and you start to sell on TikTok. And if it's picking up, you double down.
that's right. So powerful. So powerful. I think it was Charlie Munger that said that if you notice that the odds are in your favor, bet heavily.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Yeah. So one other question. I'm really enjoying this conversation. You said for a business to no, for a business to grow in Africa, what are the top 5 metrics you think they should look at every single day?
That's a
Like they
good.
should
That's a
get
good.
obsessed with those metrics every day.
So I mean, for me, I would say, while it depends on your business, there's probably a funnel of sorts.
Yeah.
So I think for me, what I always ask is, okay, one, what is what does revenue today look, if you and that's if you sell every day, right?
Mm,
So that's another thing. Some of these things, they don't matter if you don't sell. They are leading indicators, they are lagging indicators.
yeah.
I always say, how many people have indicated interest in whatever product it is you're selling,
Very good.
and how can you capture that interest, right?
Mm,
What is the conversion rate of people who go from interest in your product, right, to purchasing decision,
mm,
right? Then after they have made a purchase, right,
mhm.
what is it costing you, right, to serve that customer, in terms of give the customer that product. Do you understand what I'm saying? What is it costing you to do that? And how does it change when you do certain things? For example, if the customer is in Abuja and it's a physical product, it will be a different cost from if the customer is in Lagos.
Yeah.
So how does that cost to serve change, right? Then you need to understand, what are your own operational costs of delivering that product? Your own salary, then what is all that, right? And then ultimately, how much, after you have paid all your expenses, how much cash do you have left?
Left.
It's not your profit, so that's free cash flow, right?
Mm,
Now, how do you take that cash and reinvest it, right, in bringing more people to the top of the funnel?
oh, very good.
But it would differ by business. You really have to look at this thing by business. But when you think about business very like a customer journey, somebody indicates interest in your product, the person converts. You need to understand the people that didn't convert. Why did they not convert?
Exactly.
That number can keep going up.
Mm-hmm.
People that converted, okay, what did it cost you to serve them?
Mm-hmm.
Is it 90% of the product cost? It means your prices are not high enough,
Mm.
right? Or it means your costs are too high. One of the two,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or both.
Yeah. Mm. Very,
Then
very
when you
good.
now understand your cost, okay, you need to now understand what are your operating costs. Like after you have paid the cost of delivering the product, what are other operating costs and how can you what at what pricing, at what volume would you be able, how much more can that infrastructure of people help you to
Mm.
expand?
Mm.
You understand?
Yeah.
How are you expanding that? And what proportion of your cost is it? It should be going down.
Mm.
It should be going down every
Yeah.
time you sell.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
And then finally, when you have free cash flow, where do you invest that additional cash? You need to
And
know
not clothes and shoes.
no. You need to find a way to invest in it so that it either where do you need to invest to reduce your cost or increase your revenue?
Fantastic. Fantastic. It's so good. When you were in Waterloo, your friendship with Pierre, you got exposed to tech. And Jeremy Johnson told you something very powerful. He's the co-founder of Andela. He told you that Africans may go through the skill route instead of the credential route. And that sparked an Andela for you.
Mhm.
Why is it important for entrepreneurs to expose themselves in terms of travel, new experiences? Because you are a product of your exposure and
Yeah,
triggered your
yeah.
hunger. Yeah.
So it's really important, and I would say, travel is not the only way, so that people don't feel left out.
Mm-hmm.
Travel is not the only way. Sometimes reading actually does more. I mean, I'll tell you, I maybe learn more about entrepreneurship by reading than by travel. But it's helpful for you to also, when you have the opportunity, go
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
what you know this thing really is. And it's so important because you are the sum of the experiences you have, or you share, or
Powerful.
are shared with you.
Powerful.
Right? If you can't be what you can't see.
Mm. Mm.
So I remember one of my very formative experiences when I was at Waterloo. I mean, I was an entrepreneur already, but I just thought it was play acting. One day, I remember coming. We used to have this joke. We used to work 5 to 9, so 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. But that was only because that those were the hours the bus ran. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the bus that we could take with our bus card only started at 5 and ended at 9. So if we didn't finish our work by 9, that means we're sleeping in the office
Mm.
or we have to walk home. And Canada is very, very cold. So you don't want to walk home. So that means you're basically sleeping in the office.
Mm.
So what happened for me was one day I came at 5 a.m. They barricaded our office, right? I now went to Tim Hortons, just right next door.
Yeah.
Just get some coffee and wait until
Yeah.
the office was open. So people now started coming in. My colleagues and everybody started coming, obviously because the office was barricaded. So one of them sat down by me. I said, Gareth, what's up now? What's going on? He said, that haven't I read the papers this morning? I said, no, I've not read it. What thing concern me, concern paper. He then said, oh, that one of the startup that sits right next to me got bought by Google. And they announced it this morning. So they barricaded that office because they didn't want anybody who had found out by then to contaminate Google's environment with anything because they were going to move to Google's office. So it was like a security,
Mm. Mm.
and they bought their startup for $40 million. My brother, what is their startup doing? You know all these lockers, this Amazon smart lockers. That's what their startup was doing. So when I saw that, I was like, this thing must be possible now. Maybe the guy beside me doesn't have two heads. We used to go and drink noodles together. We used to go and drink pho. You understand what I'm saying? Eh? He doesn't have 2 years. I know the guy now. Now my
Mm.
guy, now Jay now, don't
Mm.
be Jay. So when that kind of thing happens to you, right? You're like, okay, look, there's a way.
Ah, yes.
There is no doubt that there is a way.
Oh, yes.
Way, day. Now just for me to find way. And that's a very different experience from reading it in a book
Yeah.
or hearing about it on television or reading about it on TechCrunch. This one now next to you, it happen.
Mm. Mm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it changes your perspective. So I appreciated the environments that I had the pleasure of spending time in because they really showed me what was possible,
Very good.
right? And those thoughts encouraged me when I came back home and things got hard because I knew that okay, even if things are so hard, at some point if we can get past this stage, it is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's so powerful. I mean, you spoke about the fact that so that we don't leave people out, that you don't need to travel to be exposed.
So you can
Sometimes
read
it was from books. What are some of your favorite entrepreneurship book coming up, and what are your favorite entrepreneurship books now at this stage of your life?
So I read when I was coming up. One of the most important books I read was a book called Founders at Work by Jessica Simpson.
Okay.
So it's like a compilation of different stories of different founders. I really liked it. I read. I think there's a lot of books like Zero to One
Yeah.
that are helpful for helping you understand the technology landscape and
Yeah.
what is important about it. Today, I love reading biographies. I
Yeah.
read biographies any day. I read JP Morgan's biography. I'm leafing through. I'm supposed to read John D. Rockefeller's biography. The biography I'm reading now is this Belewura.
Okay. I don't know.
Belewura was one of the founders of NCNC and NNDP. She was a market woman. She was the founder of the Lagos Market Women Association. One of
Wow.
the theologians of Lagos. Abibatu Mogaji was her mentee.
Wow.
Exactly. So this is a biography of her. So I love biographies. That was my favorite thing. Because so somebody goes through an experience,
Yes.
when you understand why, how, you know what you understand what I'm saying. Like
Yes.
you understand how to think in those circumstances,
Yes.
what was going through their mind. You
Yeah.
can identify with it. You're not weird
Yes.
when you have certain preferences.
Yes.
You understand what So I love reading biographies. That's my favorite genre of. I stopped reading fiction a long time ago.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that. You said that your dad was a cab driver and your mom sold fish. What lasting lessons did that impress upon you seeing
Well,
that growing up?
my family. One thing I learned, I picked up was that Nigeria is a country that a lot of people say it's not possible for you to move up in the social mobility.
Yes.
But my experience is different, right? Because my parents, when I was born, my parents were not wealthy people, right? Like I said, my dad was driving kabu kabu, my mother was selling ice fish, and she became a pastor. Both of them were graduates. They didn't have work. They were looking for work for very long periods of time. Eventually, my dad got a job at Now Merchant Bank. My mother went into ministry. She was a lab technician for a while. Then she went into ministry. Then, like that, from there, my dad got into Shell as working for the pension fund administrator. My mom went into was also in ministry, continued to go into ministry. So over my lifetime, I watched my parent. My father now is the G of Foursquare.
Wow.
And my mother, of course, works with him in that capacity, right? And what you learn is the possibilities that Nigeria
Come on now.
can give you.
Come on.
You
Now.
understand? That's not possible in a generation to go from doing kabu kabu to leading the 5th largest congregation in the country.
Yes. Yes.
You understand what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
So it gives you a special appreciation for Nigeria.
Very good. Well, this is
That
so
if you're
cool.
determined and you work hard, there's
Yeah.
really no limit to what you can do. So I sometimes feel sorry for people who, I mean, it's one thing to leave Nigeria to get comfort and experience abroad. It's another thing to leave Nigeria and be saying the evil you have done is enough, because
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you're ultimately throwing away an opportunity for social mobility. It makes
Mm,
sense for you to go abroad, maybe get additional experience, work in a few other contexts, but ultimately say, okay, once I get my passport, I'm coming back to Nigeria.
mm.
But for you to leave Nigeria alone completely, and you see people make,
Very
very,
terrible
very
statements.
terrible decisions,
Shameful.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very terrible decisions, like selling your house. I think there's a gun
Ah.
to sell your house, you know, things like that. You don't do those types of things, because ultimately you will still come back.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your best chance of social mobility is here. They're never going to let you be equal in their society.
Mm, mm.
And the opportunities for social. Have you ever heard of a cobbler, a taxi driver becoming GO of a?
It's not gonna happen.
It's not going to happen in the UK now. It won't
Yeah,
happen.
it's not gonna
It
happen.
can never happen. They will never let it happen,
Yeah. Why are you bullish on Nigeria?
because Nigeria represents, I think, the idea that black people can self-govern. Do you understand? Like,
Hmm.
if you consider that Nigeria is one of the few countries in the world that is majority black, without a single, there are over 7,000 offices in Nigeria, over 7,000
Mm.
elective offices in Nigeria, and there's not a single white person that has been elected to any of those roles. Even albinos, maybe except one. You understand? Eh? Consider that for a moment and think about how few countries in the world can say that. And even in their business, in the business arena, you go and look at all the CEOs, the owners of the biggest companies in the country, they are not white people. Kenya, maybe you can say, okay, fine, they have black
History. Yeah.
politicians, but their business is white. Their business sector is white, it's very white. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
The chairman, I think the chairman of their Kenya Airways, Michael Joseph, is a white man.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. He's a
Wow.
Kenyan. He's a Kenyan. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
But he's a white Kenyan. There's nothing. I mean, there are very few white Nigerians.
Very few. Very few.
So I say that, when you talk about a majority black country that can govern itself, Nigeria is the best experiment in that respect so far.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Ian, this has been a very, very, very fascinating conversation. I have two more questions for you now later. I know you're a very, very busy man. You said that you emphasize three things at the early stages of a startup. You said first, you say you ensure that their first check is from you. You ensure that someone advises them. You ensure that someone introduces them to customers. When you say advise them, what do you advise them on specifically?
So there are a few things. I think the first thing is understanding how to talk about the unique customer insights they have that makes their business possible. Because there's a way you must talk about that other people can understand that you have something they don't have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or at the very least, they should give you a shot. You
Mm,
understand? Because it's not a problem that they are looking to solve. You understand? So you need somebody who can advise you on how to talk about that. You need somebody that can advise you on the right kind of capabilities you
mm,
need on your team, right? A lot of people like to think of co-founding as, oh, me and my friends. Yeah, sure, maybe it can work. But most times you just need to find the best talent that has the capabilities you are looking for. Otherwise, you're just joking.
yeah, yeah. Sorry to interrupt this line of thought, I just want to add this now. If you're advising them, what's the first role you think they should hire first? And at what stage? Sales,
depends on the
marketing,
person.
EA?
It depends on the person who is building, who is the founder or the person who started. You understand? You hire for what you don't have.
Come on now.
You understand what I'm saying? You hire for what you don't have. So if you were starting a company, I won't go and tell you to go and hire a marketing person. That would be foolishness. Do you understand? The role
Yeah.
is already is higher. There's no vacancy there. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Fully, I get it.
So for some people it might be finance.
Mm,
For some people it might be, business development. Maybe they're shy. They don't know how to talk to people.
yeah.
For some people, it might be just operations. Somebody who can actually just keep tracks on a train.
Yeah.
For some people, it might be design. Somebody that can just think through
Yeah.
and talk to customers and
Yeah.
make sure that the solution is designed. So you usually need these types of people on your team to deliver. So you have to think through the capabilities you need on your team.
Wow. My brother, this has been
The
a
other thing is,
yeah.
you need advice on how to find your customer, how
Very
to
good.
access your customer at scale.
Mm,
A lot of people, yes, you have unique customer insights about Malam,
mm,
understand? But you cannot be going to Malam one after the other. Do you understand? So do you know, are you close to the head of all the Malams
come on
in
now.
Yaba?
Mm.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So you need somebody that can advise you. Oh, my friend is the shehu of this neighborhood. Okay, go and meet him. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Then you need advice on products. What is the product that actually gets their problem solved? Sometimes startups will build a tool that increases the problem the person has. It's like the people that build financial inclusion apps. Before, the guy was just, he has a card that his workplace gave him. He has cash. Now you've increased his problem. He has to now go and get a smartphone of 19,000 and his salary is 30,000. How will he do it? Meanwhile, his Nokia 3310 was working just fine for him. You've now come and added your own wahala to his wahala. You understand what I'm saying?
I fully understand
So
it.
that you build the products that they can afford to use rather than the one that will be taking 800 GB data from them. 800 naira per GB data from them. They don't have that kind of money. Then, after that, you now need to figure out, actually, is this a product I can deliver for less, significantly less than I can sell it for? Do you understand what I'm saying? If it's not a product you can deliver for significantly less, and somebody has to be there to advise you on how to make that calculation that it is less. Because if you leave people to their own devices, if you look at the way they will look, the way they will count it, you self will shock. I've seen situations where founders don't count their salary, or they don't count what they spend on sales. You understand?
Yeah.
They say, oh, it's revenue and my profit is after I pay for the office rent. Everything else is profit. And salaries, everything else is profit. But you're just kidding yourself. Because you yourself, you're a cost to the business.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? So that's how people run into trouble, when they don't have the right advice on financials.
Hey, this has been a fascinating conversation. So I'm happy that I waited this long for it.
Anytime.
I hope you enjoyed yourself. I'll stop the recording. I'll say one or two things with you before,
No,
I-
of
before
course,
I
of
close.
course, of course, of course.
So guys, click on the subscribe button on YouTube. I couldn't even say the subscribe because I was so engrossed in the conversation. So if you're listening on Spotify, click on the subscribe button. Apple, click on the plus sign, write a comment, send me a DM of how much you enjoyed this episode. So